Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Davis, and I am the chair of the Individual Awards Committee. And on behalf of the Individual Awards Committee and the Award for Excellence team, we're so excited that you are here, either here for the webinar this afternoon or for the recording in the future. Our speakers today are Ruth Shoemaker, Jane Flowers, Victoria Steelman, and myself. So we are going to begin with the criteria for the individual awards and the deadline, kind of the timeline that we're going to have going forward. So for the individual awards, you apply online on the AORN website, and only one person will have access to each online application. And we'll explain a little bit more why that's important here in a minute. So there are a total of 11 individual awards this year, but next year we plan to have one additional award, the Executive Nurse Leader Award. More details will be coming out next year about qualifications for that award. Some of the other qualifications for individual awards are the nominee must be a current AORN member, and anyone who submits a nomination must be an AORN member because we submit all nominations through the AORN website after you've logged in. All nominees must have a curriculum vitae for all awards except for the Rising Star, which is our new perioperative nurse award. Everyone must have an endorsement for the nominator statement section of each award. If you've written a nomination before, you know that the third section or narrative that's required on all the awards is called a nominator statement, and this is new, and we still allow self-nominees, but we would like all self-nominees starting this year to have that section completed by someone else. They can copy and paste that section into their awards packet so they can still nominate themselves on the website, and that endorsement, more of that information will come later in the presentation. And if you have any questions, there's multiple places you can reach our team. Some of the questions are on our FAQ on the AORN website. We have a handbook that should help guide you through the process and give more information as well. And we also, and we'll have this at the end as well, but the OR Nurse Link has a specific group that members of the Individual Awards Committee and the AFE team will look at to answer any questions you may have about awards. I'm just going to run through all of the individual awards. They're structured somewhat differently as to how you submit. So we've included exactly what is on the description on the website once you've entered the basic information as to what you're answering for each of these questions. We haven't provided that previously, at least since I've been on the awards committee the past 2 years, before you actually get to that point. So that was something that we've been working hard to try and help on the front end, that everyone knows exactly the expectations, not just the description of the award or examples, but exactly what you're going to be asked. So for the first one, there are 2 different narratives that will need to be provided. Again, the second one, Outstanding Achievement and Mentorship, there's 2 separate narratives, one that really just elaborates on the first one, kind of depending on the route that you've taken. The third one is that answer only 2 out of the 3. So there are 3 choices for a perioperative mentorship, but you only need to answer 2 of these. For Outstanding Achievement Education, both narrative 1 and 2 ask for the exact same thing. So we want each applicant or nominator to give 2 examples, 2 different examples. But you will see that the verbiage is the same on both narratives 1 and 2. The same for achievement in clinical education, give 2 examples. So both of the prompts are the exact same. The same for perioperative nursing clinical practice. And then perioperative nursing evidence-based practice as one of those, answer only 2 out of these 3 choices. We found that some people have answers that fit 2 much better than another, depending on kind of the route you've taken or the reason for your evidence-based practice project. This one again is give 2 different examples of achievements in perioperative nursing management. So 2 separate examples. The prompt will be the same for both narratives. This one has 2 separate prompts, so just follow the instructions on each one. And volunteer leadership, it's a little bit different. Narratives 1 and 2 start the same. Narrative 2 has a little bit more information, so elaborating on projects that are outside of AORN to give a little bit more information. And then the Rising Star Award, again, this is a little bit different than some of our others. It's for nurses with less than 5 years of nursing experience in a perioperative setting, and we do accept a resume for this one. Later in the presentation, Victoria will go over the difference between a CV and a resume, and I'm sure it will be obvious to most why this expectation is just a little bit different, as we hope that these applicants do pursue other awards in the future. But as a new nurse, a lot of our nurses are even 2 and 3 years into their career. They may not have much to put on a CV yet, so we did decide a resume was acceptable, but a CV is accepted here as well. Now we will go over kind of that new requirement of an endorsement. It's only new for self-nominators. It will be the same. So if you have written a nomination for someone else in the past, it won't be the exact same. This is specifically for, like I said, self-nominators, that this is kind of a new requirement. So everyone has to have one, but you've already done it if you've nominated someone else. It can be written by anyone who knows about the body of work applicable to the application. So if you're a self-nominator applying for a volunteer award, then the volunteer coordinator might be a great example of someone who could write that for you. When we want to challenge our nurses who self-nominate to find someone either in your AORN chapter, in your organization, within whatever scope of work you're doing, that can give their perspective. Something I know both of our committees have discussed is just how much more information we get from those nominator statements. And the people who have someone else endorse them and even write that nomination, they usually have a much richer application. And we want to put everyone kind of on the same playing field with this. So this is really just to give everyone a better opportunity of winning the awards. And again, if you do self-nominate, you can ask that person to write the endorsement and send it to you. Just copy and paste it into the application. It should be not something that feels difficult. And if you think that you might be eligible for multiple awards, you may consider the Award for Excellence, which we know just has a much more global aspect with the requirements and the expectations for those who are being nominated. And Ruth Shoemaker will be presenting about the criteria for the Award for Excellence.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and good evening, everyone. We're absolutely delighted to have everyone here. Could you advance the first slide, please? Thank you. There's a separation of the awards committee and the Award for Excellence selection panel. So I wanted to make that clear to everyone. This Award for Excellence selection panel consists of former Award for Excellence recipients, and we serve 2 years and then we rotate off. It is a chair, which I am delighted to serve as the chair this year, and 5 other recipients serve on the selection panel. With me this evening is Dr. Victoria Steelman, and she is also a recipient of the Award for Excellence. The Award for Excellence is the highest award bestowed by AORN. And there is some difference between this award and the individual awards, because with the Award for Excellence, you have to have demonstrated excellence on a global level in practice, education, and research. Now, research can seem very daunting, and intimidating to some, but it is either that you are conducting the research or that you're involved in a major research project. The award for excellence was first given, the first recipient was in 1982, and that was given to Dr. Barbara J. Grundman. And since then, we've had 33 recipients. I don't like to refer to them as winners because you're not really a winner of the award for excellence. You're a recipient. And I think I can liken it very much that it's your lifelong work or your lifelong work to date. It's more than just what you've done at the local chapter level. And I know many of you are doing phenomenal things at your chapter level, but it goes beyond that. There are some examples on the AORN website that you can look at, but also this year, it is our hopes that for excellent recipients will have space in a booth or at a table where you can talk to us about specifically what we did to become recipients of this award. I think it'll help you a lot. I would also encourage you that if this is an award that you think that you would like to apply for, that you spend a great deal of time planning for it. You really need to map it out and look at what you've done in all three areas of practice, education, and research. And as I said, it has a global implication. So it has what you've done needs to have a very wide impact. Next, please. The nominees must include documentation of their individual contribution in each area of the award, the significance, the outcomes, and the impact. And this must be included in your CV. You need to validate in your CV what you're saying in your award packet. The nominees must have a degree in nursing at the baccalaureate, master's, or doctoral level, an active member of AORN for 5 years, and at least one certification, active or emeritus, and one endorsement. And we are only asking for one endorsement. So please, if this is something that you are submitting your name for, do not ask multiple people to submit your name. We will be answering questions at the end. So at this time, I'd like to turn the program over to my colleague, Dr. Victoria Steelman.
Thank you, Ruth, for that. Sometimes we're asked, why is a CV required? Can you move to the next slide, please? This requirement is for you. Back one, please. This requirement is for you because it's going to maximize your ability to develop a successful application package. I'm going to show you a few of the reasons why this is better than a resume. It also levels the playing field so everyone is submitting a CV. Next slide. At times, applicants think, well, I can submit a resume. I have that already. And I'm going to show you a little bit on this slide what the difference between a resume and a CV is. A resume is really about your employment opportunities that you've had, and you're going to be using it to move up to another position within your facility or within another facility. So the focus of the resume is on what you have done within your facility. It identifies key responsibilities that you've had, and it demonstrates why you're ready for the next step that you're applying for. A CV, although there is some overlap with things like education and professional positions that you've had, it's used for awards and recognition. And instead of really focusing on what you've done within your facility, it describes contributions you've made outside of your employment setting. It showcases the impact of those contributions, and also it can show the sustainability of those over time. There is a format for a CV that's going to be on the AORN website as soon as the applications are open, so you can see what a template for that might look like if you'd like to use that template. Next slide, please. So I envision the CV as the foundation for your application. Once you have your CV, you can prioritize what you put in your different narratives that you put in your application. You can decide which things in your CV are the most important to showcase and just plot them into those. You can also look at what things aren't in those questions that you might want to include in that are in your CV. And those are things that when you give your CV to your sponsor or your nominator, that they can look at that and say, I think this is really important, and I think we should showcase this in this letter. So all of these are together a package. They're not independent of one another. They integrate and enhance the other sections of your application. Altogether, they become your final application. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn this over to Jane to talk about how to create a winning award nomination package. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria, and thanks to the awards committee for allowing me to discuss some tips and tricks to help you create winning nomination packets. Next slide. As soon as the awards open up, you need to really explore all of them. You've all got the advantage tonight because you've just had Michelle talk about the different criteria for all of them, so you've had an opportunity to see it. So review it, learn what it is about it, read any descriptors on the website before you ever start to create your package. I create a nomination package on my computer with all of this information for each and every one, because as Michelle told you earlier, only the person creating the package is able to access the package. So if you want to send the questions to your nominees for them to answer, you've got to somehow have them. So it's important to really know what's going on with all of them. They said 11 individual awards, but I put excellence here, which makes it 12. So it's important to understand the difference. Next slide. Next slide, please. How do you select people? I keep an ongoing list of folks that may be potential winners. All of these people on this slide have won an award in the past. And so you see a lot of differences in them. The presentation that I'm doing is really focusing on nominating someone else, but the tips and tricks would really work if you're self-nominating as well. So it is important to listen to. Where do you find potential nominees? Well, it's pretty easy. First off, they have to be a member of AORN. That's really critical. You might find them in your chapter. You might find them in your hospital. When you go to Expo, you meet a lot of different people. You see different classes, attend a seminar, a webinar, outreach program. Even a chapter meeting, you might hear somebody that's a great speaker, great person to put in your potential list. A journal author might be the same way. So they might be people that are really deserving. Since I'm now retired, rising star is always a hard one for me to do. So I usually reach out and ask a friend who knows somebody who's a rising star. And so, they'll tell you, oh, here's a person. Sometimes I know them, sometimes I don't. And I'll ask them, tell me why, and give me some contact information on them. And then I'll reach out to them. When you start looking at it, you want to be able to start pairing them to who you think is going to work in what category. So that makes it really important. Set up timelines and dates. I guess that sounds overwhelming to all of you that are listening, but the person being nominated has 2 questions to answer. You need to give them time to get the information to them. for them to get it back to you. And if you're doing it over dinner one night, it's a lot easier. But if you're doing it by email, it takes a little bit more time. So you've got to do some editing, and you might want to go back and forth with your questions and answers. So setting up a timeline, or I set up an Excel spreadsheet, it helps keep you on track. My awards elf asked me how I kept track of it last year, and I said I set up a Excel spreadsheet. And it's important to me because I generally nominate people in a lot of different categories, but I really only ever nominate one person per category. Establish your timeline before you make any calls. Next slide, please. When you call your nominee or the person that you want to nominate, tell them why you want to nominate them and for what award you want to nominate them for. They're usually floored. They're speechless. It's really kind of an amazing experience. I get a lot of type thing, but they'll tell me it's really just a great honor to be nominated and for somebody to think of me, to recognize me. They really don't realize the strength of their contributions or the value of their contributions to perioperative nursing. Be sure to tell them why you think they're a good person, and what you see their contributions to be. That really generates where you want to go with their answers. When I'm talking to them, I ask them a lot of questions. It's amazing what they'll tell me, but it's a great time to find that one little caveat of information that really makes their nomination packages stand out. When you're talking to them, you might also discover that while you think that your clinical educator is the best person for the clinical educator category, when you start talking to them, they're really passionate about something else. And maybe their passion in what they start telling you is really evidence-based practice. Since you studied all your categories earlier, you would really be smartest to change the category. To do that, always talk to them. I've never had one of them tell me, oh no, I only want clinical education. They're really just happy to be recognized. But you really want to pair the right person in the right category. Don't hesitate to change it, because you really want to, your job as a nominator is just to make them successful. Provide your expectations to them and tell them that you'll email them the questions. One thing that I often will ask them to do is talk to the people you work with and ask them why they think you're great at it. Tell them what's going on. But when you're talking to them, remember your timeline. You want to set up a timeline that they can have, this time I think they're going to have awards from the beginning of July to mid-October. So you've got a little bit of time to play with. But I always ask them to get it back to me in 2 to 3 weeks. Gives me a little bit of time. And then at the end of it, I have time to go back and forth with them. If I'm not fond of their answer, if it needs to be rewritten, I'm going to talk to them. And oftentimes we go back and forth 3 or 4 times with their answers to get them refined down so they're really answering the question. You don't want to be rushing it. So give yourself time. You do not want to be doing these packets on the last day at the 12th hour. Give yourself time if you're going to do it right. Next slide, please. Probably the most important thing that I'm going to tell you is going to sound like the simplest thing that I could ever say. When answering the questions, be sure to answer the question that they ask. I've done a lot of awards packages through the years, and the nominees have a real hard time patting themselves on the back. Make sure that they answer what is being said. Focus their answer to an overarching theme topic, and then use your examples and data and supporting documentation and descriptors to develop their story. Suggest to them that they reiterate the question. My first outstanding contribution to clinical education is, and it's just something to focus them into the question. I'm using clinical education a lot through this just because it's an easy one for me to process and give an examples of. But if you look at it, most of us are educators at heart. We've all done orientation. We've all done education. We've all done competencies. We've all taught CPR. But what makes you a better educator than other people? And it's the way you tell your story. State numbers or any kind of data that would support what you're talking about. An example would be, you implemented a Periop 101 program at your institution. You had, at the time you implemented it, a vacancy rate of 35%. While dealing with multiple travel staff, you coordinated a Periop 101 program, educating successfully 18 RNs over the past year and decreasing your vacancy rate from 35% to 17%. You currently have 11 RNs who are 3 months from the completion of their program, which will take your vacancy rate down to, I believe, 6%. These numbers speak volume when you can say you changed a vacancy rate from 35% to 6%. Think about what that does for satisfaction. Add positive comments or quotes from students, mentors, administrators, anybody that you can on something that you did well. This is the time to really take pride in what you do and to tell your story. Sometimes you might want to add a quote to it. I particularly do this on my endorsement letters. I'll find a quote that matches the category and matches the contribution of this nominee, and I build my nomination supporting letter from there. You may, to do this, just Google education quotes. Find a quote that works for the nominee, the award, the category, and select it and then run with it. Remember, AORN gives you 3,000 characters, and these characters include spaces and punctuation. It's easier for me to think of this in terms of words. It's about 450 words. Use them. This is the time to pat yourself on the back and tell your story. So elaborate. Put the data in there, this descriptions. The judging panel really doesn't want to hear that you are a fabulous nurse. What the judging panel wants to hear is, why are you a fabulous nurse? Or why do your colleagues think you're fabulous? Think in terms of who, what, where, when, and why as you develop your answers. Use the tools at hand. Your computer has spelling grammar checkers. Read all the statements out loud. It's amazing how many errors you'll pick up when you read it out loud. If you don't write well, find someone who can help you perfect your answers. I frequently call my sister, a teacher, or an AORN colleague, my awards elf, to read the statements, to review the statements, and I ask for their input and clarify. Their edits often identify points that strengthen the nomination application. Yes, I'll work with my nominees when they develop their answers and help them edit. We have phenomenal nurses in AORN who should be recognized for what they do. My job as the nominator is to make them shine. Next slide, please. The endorsement letter, sponsor letter, support letter, whatever we want to call it. I never write it until I have all the information from my nominees. First off, I really want to make sure that I know what they're doing. When writing my support letter, I can either endorse what they've written or I can add another accomplishment. It just depends on who my nominee is, what they do, what their contribution is. Follow all the previous suggestions on grammar and eliminating spelling errors. One of the quirks of the system is that when you copy and paste from your Word program to the application, it eats about 25 of your 3,000 characters. So I always aim for a little bit less than 3,000. Don't know why. And it will either ask you to upload or copy and paste your nomination into the AORN awards packet. The packet itself is pretty cool. You insert the thing, make sure you keep hitting the save button. When it's complete, it will tell you it's complete and ask you, do you want to submit it, and hit the submit button. Once you've done this, you will get an automatically generated letter back from the awards committee thanking you for the nomination. Next slide. My final tip is to make the package memorable. Find something that the judges won't forget. An example is out of the AORN Leader Mentorship application from last year. My nominee stated, being a mentor and developing future nurse leaders is a gift that I give myself. Someone took time with me, so I'm blessed to share with others. I have the pleasure of being one small part of their leadership journey, planting the seeds and watching them grow. There's nothing better than knowing that this generation that I mentored will soar into the future and take nursing and AORN to new heights. What a powerful statement connecting this nominee to mentoring AORN leaders. This is not the time to have your statement read like your resume, a CV, your job description, or even a text message. Tell your story. One of the winners, one of my past winners, when we were working on finalizing statements, she said, you added the fluff. I made edits that made her story unforgettable and touched the hearts of the judges. Nothing was falsified, but I created statements that the judges remembered. Yes, it's important to write well. If you don't write well, partner with someone who does. Ask for help. Remember, great speakers often have speech writers. Authors have ghostwriters. This is the time to shine. Focus on your accomplishments and tell your story. Next slide, please. After the nominations have been submitted, ask your nominees to keep you informed. They're going to hear before you hear anything, if you hear. Last year, they started letting you know, so that was a good improvement. If they've won, you get to be one of the first people to congratulate them. Aha, that's a great moment, and they're speechless. If they haven't won, it's a great time to talk about, let's resubmit you next year. Maybe it just wasn't their year. If they've won, we talk about their next steps and what's going to be asked, and they get asked to send in a 200-word bio. I always suggest use about 150 of these words for your bio, and then spend the last 50 words for your award. This is what is read when you receive the award. So you really want to make these bios make the person shine. I always suggest to them that if they can, take a family member with them to witness their big moment. There are few times in life that a person ever gets publicly recognized in front of a large group of their colleagues. One of my previous winners said that being recognized was the culmination of her career. What a moment to share with someone you love. If it's not possible, ask a friend to record on your phone this wonderful moment so that you can share it with your family and workplace later. Being recognized for a job well done is an incredible experience and one that you won't ever forget. Take some time, recognize yourself or a colleague for an award. While it's wonderful for those who win, as a nominator, I always feel like I am the most excited, proudest AORN mama in the audience, beaming with pride with each person as they walk across the stage and accept their award. Thank you for listening tonight. Next slide. Now the committee will take any questions. Please raise your hand or ask the question in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And we are thankful that you are willing to write so many nominations for fellow AORN members. I didn't introduce Jane and her expertise at the beginning. My apologies. She is very experienced in awards nominations, and that's why we wanted her on the panel tonight. We have a few more things I think each of us to add. Again, thank you, Jane, for
Thank you.
talking about the timeline for the awards. They will open up on July the 1st and they close the second week in October. And that exact date will be posted on the AORN website. We definitely want everyone to apply, and you can see the OR Nurse link both here and also in the webinar chat. So it will be an easy link for you to click on, but I'm going to let Ruth Shoemaker give a few additional comments, and then Victoria wanted to give a few additional comments as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Jane, and Victoria as well. I wanted to give some examples of recipients of the Award for Excellence, and the accomplishments are things that they have done to become recipients, because some of you may be wondering about that. As I said, there are some examples that are on the AORN website, but I'd like to specifically say that some of the accomplishments that I know of are people being publishing major textbooks like Dr. Jane Rothrock, who is on the Awards for Excellence selection panel. She's written a major textbook that's been used in schools of nursing across the country. We've also had time ago, Ruth Baden, who I refer to as the mother of RNFAs. She was really instrumental in getting RNFAs recognized, reimbursed, teaching it in her School of Nursing. This past year, Dr. Cassandra Monroe, as all of you know, she has the Monroe scale for pressure injuries. And it's used globally across the country. And there's just so many major accomplishments. Helping establish the International Federation of Perioperative Nursing. And some of these may seem very global, and they may seem almost out of reach, but they're not. Because I think if you sit down and think about the criteria of this award, and you start writing down the things that you've done and that the impact that they have had on a very wide level, that you're going to be amazed at the kind of things you've done. So I want to encourage you, don't be scared of the Award for Excellence. There are so many of you out there who are deserving of this award. We look forward to seeing your submission this year. The difference between an endorsement and the nominee. If you're the one writing up your accomplishments, it has to be written up by you. Jane talked about the endorsement, and she's done many endorsements for people and written endorsement letters. And she's such a pro that she helps people write up what their accomplishments are. But you are really going to have to sit down and be the one to think out what your accomplishments are in the particular award you're submitting for, or Award for Excellence. So thank you for allowing me some additional time to provide a little additional information. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Steelman.
Thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Michelle. Just building on the fantastic information that Jane gave you and all her expertise in assisting people write successful applications. I wanted to just say one more thing about the CV. Sometimes people make a mistake and they try to write the application before the CV. That doesn't work. If the CV seems daunting, consider this application a 2-year project. Do the CV the first year, make it as pristine as you can make it, and then do the application, the rest of the application the next year. I think that's been a very successful strategy that people have used. The other thing is, when you do your CV, show it to a potential sponsor or person who might be nominating you. If they see that there's a gap between where you currently are and what would be needed to be competitive for the award, they can alert you and indicate a couple things they think you should do before you apply for the award. So all of you have done tremendous amounts of work and are very deserving of awards. Trying to get it to match one of these individual awards is where there could be, it might be a challenge. So if you haven't done a CV before, one strategy is to do it the first year and then do the rest of the application the second year. That'll make it much more manageable. Thank you all.
Thank you for that addition, Victoria. I think that that's a fantastic idea. And we do have our first question, and you can put them in the question and answer, the Q&A box. And thank you to Daphne Panezza, who sent a comment to the panelists that Dr. Rothrock's textbook is one of the textbooks used in the Philippines. I just thought that was a really cool comment to share. So the first question is, why does the nominee have to write something? So for the applicants that Jane assists, for example, the nominee doesn't necessarily have to write anything. Jane can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she does all of the work. So a nominee does not have to write something. The clarification is this year, if you choose to self-nominate, we do require an endorsement from someone else. We want a third-party perspective on all of your work. If you are already being nominated by a third party, we know you're going to give them information, so it's already a collaboration. And we know through all of our time at AORN, I'm sure we all do, how important the collaboration is for everything that we do in our career. And we want the awards to all reflect the same on all of our applicants. And that is why we have added this requirement. I don't see any. Go ahead.
Michelle, it's Jane. Traditionally in the past, the person being nominated answers 2 questions for the individual awards. Could I write them? Oftentimes I could, but they really write a good majority of what they do. I just go through and help them edit them. Some people just really struggle with the writing.
You know, I also would like to add, it's okay to ask someone to put you up for an award. It's okay if they know you and they want to work with you. I think there's a lot of people who would be absolutely delighted to do that. So don't be shy to ask someone, because we do require an endorsement now. You can self-nominate, but you have to have the endorsement.
I'll agree with what Bruce said. A lot of people will call me and say, hey, Jane, would you ever consider putting me up for an award? And I always keep a running list, as I said. It works out really well. And I have met some of the most incredible people working with them on their awards packages. And quite frankly, they're incredible what they have done And every time I work with somebody on an awards package, I think, boy, I wish I was doing that. I mean, it's just really impressive material that they do, and it's quite inspiring. I know there are questions out there.
Have we answered your questions? Have we done such a good job? I'd like to think so, but you know, I just keep on wanting to emphasize there are hundreds of nurses are deserving of awards. I mean, we have close to 50,000 members alone who are just AORN. And yet there's years when you have a handful submitted.
Another thing is, if you're not ready to try nominating somebody on a national level yet, there's a ton of other awards out there. I mean, every hospital has awards. Look at your, if you've got department nurse of the years, or facility nurse of the year, there's GEM, Spectrum, Good Samaritan, March of Dimes, Great 100. There's any number of other types of awards. I think I filled out packages in all of them, but you know, it's a great learning thing to sit there and do. So go for it.
You know, we have a new award for diversity and inclusion. There's so many of you who phenomenal work. I really am in hopes that we have a lot of submissions this year. And Michelle, accolades to the committee, because there is going to be a new award, I think, for some senior leaders who are directors and at a VP level in the past have not fit in to some of these categories, particularly when it came to being recognized for outstanding perioperative leadership. And so it's really going to open it up, another opportunity there. Michelle, can you share some of the things you're looking at for that particular award, if it's going to be significantly different?
It was the award that I discussed, I think on my second slide. So it is the Executive Nurse Leader Award. And we will share details once we have all of them confirmed, but it is definitely still in the works right now. So yes, and we do have a few questions now. So one of the questions says, why do you think there are so few award submissions? And I can't speak to the award for excellence, but last year we had about 50 awards to score for individual awards. And it was actually a lot more than I think the year before of completed applications. But awards are a lot of work. And I think, to Jane's point earlier, a lot of nurses don't believe their work is deserving until someone else says, hey, this is a big deal and we want to celebrate it. And as someone who writes a lot of local and state award nominations, it's almost just as exciting for me who wrote the nomination, I think, as it is the person who receives it, just to get to be a part of that. And so I don't know if I think we don't have very many. I think there's always an opportunity to recognize more people, though, but it is a lot of work. There are hours spent on every single application, and we know that, we value that as we score each and every award. And our committee, the individual awards committee, also scores the chapter awards. And so we put a lot of time and effort into thinking through each and every detail and the way we score things, and reading each and every detail to determine the person we think is most qualified to receive that award. If I don't see any more questions, again, we have the AORN nurse link posted on this video. And if you're watching this on the recording in the future, that should be live until the end of the awards application in the second week of October. So feel free to ask as many questions there as you would like, and someone from our committee is happy to respond. And thank you for coming this afternoon. We know everyone's time is very valuable, and we appreciate everyone coming, and we hope that you will be either the next nominee or the next nominator to submit a successful application, and that you and or your nominee will be recognized on stage in Nashville in 2024. So thanks everyone again for coming tonight, and hope everyone has a good rest of their evening.
Thank you.